For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with blowing and freezing snow.
Hello and welcome to the SnowBrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a mountain guide, an Alaska heli ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of SnowBrains. And when I do something that I think is cool, and I ask my wife, "How you like me now?" she invariably responds with, "The same." This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Are you ready for an unforgettable ski getaway that takes care of everything? And I mean everything. Head to one of Club Med's mountain resorts where you can experience the thrill of the slopes without worrying about a thing. With their all-inclusive packages, you'll get all your lift tickets, ski passes, ski and snowboard lessons for all ages and ski levels, delicious meals, exciting après-ski activities, and even childcare for the kids, all included in the price. So you can focus on what matters most, carving perfect turns and enjoying the breathtaking views. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to book your ski escape today. My guest today is Sven Brunso. Ski Magazine has called Sven the most photographed and published skier in history. Sven has graced the covers of over 135 magazines, and he has been in over 2,500 published photographs. He has also overcome some incredible adversity in his life, and his story is nothing short of inspiring. Hello, Sven. Welcome to the show. Thank you very, very much for being here. How are you, man?
I'm great, Miles. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, me too, man. This is going to be fun. So when did you ski last?
I skied in early June. Normally, I would ski through about middle of July here in the San Juans, but I ended up having knee surgery middle of June, so I kind of ended things early. And I think at 53 years old, I've kind of stopped skiing just for the novelty's sake. When the skiing stops being good, I'm okay hanging up the skis. And it was a pretty low tide year here in the San Juans and pretty warm spring. So I think when I skied in early June, 3,000-foot couloir, skied right back to the car, and that was a good way to finish it off.
That's beautiful down there, man. I still haven't skied the San Juans. I got to get down there and ski with you. How many days do you think you skied this season?
I barely hit 100. It's probably
You
the
did?
least
Okay.
I've gotten. Yeah, I think I ended at about 102 or 103. I had knee surgery in October.
Oh, wow.
Or actually November, after we coming back from Antarctica on a trip I was on, and you were a part of as well. Came back from that trip, had knee surgery. So I was out for about 6 weeks. So I started skiing right around the first of the year. But yeah, normally I shoot for about 150 to 175 days, but this year was pretty lean. But I'm sure I'm not getting much sympathy from people skiing 100 days.
No, 100 days is the magic number, man. So can't complain too much there. Well, thanks for that, Sven. Today, I really want to dig into your being the most published photographed skier in history, your 30-year pro skiing career, and a lot more, man. You've got so much going on. But I really like to start with your life story. So I ask everybody to do this. I think it's a really cool way to figure out where people are coming from, where they're headed, where they are now. If it's cool with you, if you could tell us your kind of quick and dirty 3-minute life story, that would be great. And if it goes over 3 minutes, it's not a problem.
Yeah, I grew up in a couple skiing hot spots, Huntington Beach, California, and Prescott, Arizona. Um, did a lot of things growing up. Huntington Beach in the 70s was probably the halcyon days of Southern California, kind of the epicenter of cool stuff to do. So I surfed, skateboarded, and surfing and skateboarding were things I loved to do, but I don't know if I was ever great at them. I started skiing when I was 10. It clicked like immediately. And I knew that was my thing, kind of had found my calling. And I don't want to say that from the very first day I knew it was something I wanted to shape my life around, but I knew pretty quick. So I kind of took that passion, shaped it into an education, got a degree, and then kind of went on and went to school for marketing. And kind of created a career that blended marketing and skiing together. And I ended up moving to Durango, Colorado in 1992, kind of a base camp for skiing. My wife was from Arizona, so I didn't want to move her to a true ski town where there was 9 months of winter. So Durango was nice, 4 nice seasons. She was so close to her family. A lot of opportunities here for jobs, and had kids, and yeah, raised a family here. So
Beautiful, man. Not anything to complain about in that life right there. Well, I just think it's so interesting that coming off the beach, ended up in, kind of Prescott, I guess, is in the north. Is that right? How far is it from Flagstaff?
yeah, so Prescott's about an hour and a half from Flagstaff. So
Okay.
Prescott's about 6,000 feet. Gets snow in the winter. I remember the first day I went to school in Prescott. I rode my skateboard across the school, and I shit you not, someone was there with a rope and actually wrangled me and lassoed me with that rope. I
No.
was riding my skateboard. Yeah. Across, and I was the only person there that had a skateboard in 1980. People in Arizona hadn't adopted skateboarding; it wasn't a thing.
Well, it must have freaked him
Uh,
out.
yeah. So, but in all reality, had we not moved to Prescott, I would have never really gotten into the outdoors. I probably still would live in Huntington Beach and be a beach bum. So a lot of things fell into place serendipitously to kind of lead to my skiing for the very first time. Christmas 1979, we had just moved to Arizona a few months before, and we went back to Indiana, where my dad's brother lived in Indianapolis. And on Christmas morning, I get up and I go to the Christmas tree, and there is a pair of skis, ski
Oh.
boots, and poles under the tree with my name on them. My cousin, who I was very close to, he's a couple years older than I was, he worked in a ski shop, and he didn't know what to get me for Christmas, but so he got me ski stuff. So what's amazing, I had never skied, but it snowed in Indianapolis that year, and it snowed a lot.
Oh.
My uncle may have lived on one of the few hills in Indianapolis. So I get all the ski gear and I go out to this hill behind his house. And I remember I put the boots on, figure out how to get into the bindings. I'm just straight lining this hill, and then I would take all the gear off, hike back up, and do it again. I remember them calling me in for lunch. I was definitely hooked. And then I think for the next few years, probably when I was like 11, 12, maybe 13, my parents would take me up to Williams a few times a year.
Then you ended up at the University of Arizona in Tucson, which
Yeah,
is kind of feels like damn near Mexico. And you saw Blizzard of Oz.
my freshman year, I went and saw the Greg Stump movie, The Blizzard of Oz. And like every other free skier of my generation, that movie probably shaped their life, probably kept a lot of people out of finishing college and becoming ski bums. But that was kind of the first ski movie I saw where there was relatable ski heroes, Glenn Plake, Scott Schmidt. These were just like, kind of everyday, ordinary people that just had this amazing passion and talent for skiing. And the movie was kind of like following them, as they went to Chamonix and skiing. And I went back to the dorm room after seeing it, picked up the rotary phone, called my dad and said, Dad, I just saw this movie and I want to be a professional skier and travel around the world and get paid. And I remember him saying that sounds great. My dad was a big dreamer, super
Wow.
supportive. And he said, hey, he goes, finish your education, have a fallback plan, then go chase the dream.
I like that.
So anyway, so after that year at Fort Lewis, I went to the University of Arizona for 3 years and ended up, graduating with a couple degrees. Mount Lemmon, which is just outside of Tucson, about 45 minutes from Tucson, had 3 amazing seasons. And so the skiing at Mount Lemmon was really good. I worked in a ski shop called Herman's in Tucson, mounting skis, and that got me free ski privileges at Mount Lemmon, Sunrise, and the Arizona Snow Bowl.
Perfect, man. I love it. So Blizzard of Oz, huge impact on you, huge impact on a lot of people that I talked to on this show and on me. Watched that a lot in college. What might be your favorite ski movie?
It's still the Blizzard of Oz.
Nice.
I really got into the matchstick movies, kind of in the late 90s, but I saw the Blizzard of Oz and kind of a segue into my ski career in 1990, in addition to trying to get 2 degrees and compress an education into a truncated amount of time and working and playing soccer in college. I was also the ski club vice president at the University of Arizona.
Whoa.
And so it wasn't a super impressive title, but it got me the ability to go on the ski trip each year they did at spring break for free. And I remember in March of 1990, I went to the SIA trade show in Las Vegas. And this was a couple years after The Blizzard of Oz came out. So Glenn Blake, Scott Schmidt are kind of at the peak of their stardom. Glenn Blake was signing autographs for Toco Ski Wax. And there's this long line, and everyone's waiting to get in line. And I wait, and he's like, "All right, what's your name?" He's getting ready to sign a poster. I'm like, I don't want a poster. I said, "I'm coming to Lake Tahoe on a ski trip, and I want to come skiing with you."
Nice.
I had heard that he lived in South Lake Tahoe. So he's like, okay. So he grabs this business card out of the rack from someone that worked at Toco, and he writes down his phone number on the back of this business card and hands it to me. He's like, if you get to Lake Tahoe, he goes, you call me when you get there and I'll take you skiing.
Wow.
So I remember I walked out of the SIA show all excited, and I told my girlfriend, who eventually became my wife, I said, yeah, I just got Glenn Blake's phone number and he told me to call when I get to Lake Tahoe and we're going to go skiing.
Huge.
Yeah, I'm sure that's his real number. I'm like, well, why wouldn't he give me his real number? And she's like, well, why would he? I said, I don't know. He seems like a really nice guy. Fast forward 2 months, University of Arizona ski trip, South Lake Tahoe. We pull in the van, pull into the parking lot. I walk over to the payphone. I've got my card, dial the phone number. Glenn Blake answers the phone. And I said, hey, this is Sven. I met you at the show. He's like, yeah, I remember you.
Wow, he remembered.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I know you want to go skiing. He's like, what are you doing right now? I said, oh, we just got here. We've been driving for 12 hours. And he's like, hey, I'm just mounting some skis. Why don't you come over and hang out? So
No
I'm hanging
way.
out in the garage with Glenn Blake. He's mounting up some K2 Extremes. Those were brand new at the time. And then we're just sitting there in the garage shooting the shit. And he is, I don't know if you've met Glenn, but he will talk to anybody about anything. He is the most passionate, down-to-earth, approachable guy. And for 2 hours, I'm sitting on the stoop in his garage there, and he's talking to me like I'm the most important person in the world. He's talking to me about why do you love tuning skis? Why are you going to school? What kind of skiing do you like to do? So anyway, we close down the night. The next morning, he comes and picks me up, and we go skiing at Kirkwood.
Yes.
So I'm trying to keep up with Glenn. And that one day probably moved my skiing further forward than any single day of my life, because I knew if I let him out of my sight, I wasn't going to have a ride home. And so Kirkwood at the time is his home mountain. So I am flying off, cornices blind, dropping chutes, skiing through, I just realized that, like, wow, he is just an amazing skier, but he's just an everyday dude. And so after that, we became friends. And then, a few years later, I told him that I kind of wanted to get into the ski business. And yeah, he helped me get my first sponsorship deal ever. He made some phone calls and greased the skids for me. And so
that's phenomenal. And I have gotten to ski with Glenn. I skied with him at Kirkwood once because that was my home mountain for a little bit. And then I got to ski the Bec de Ross in Verbier with him randomly, him and his wife, Kimberly. And he is, like you said, he's a total sweetheart, diamond in his tooth, he's nonstop laughing, like mouth open, laughing in your face, always smiling, just such a high energy, happy, positive, just contagious human being. So what a cool way to get things started.
Yeah, absolutely. The greatest ambassador in the world for the sport of skiing. I've never met anybody that is any more passionate about it than Glenn is.
Tell us real quick, I guess, what was your very first ski photos you ever took?
Kind of another play off this whole Glenn Blake thing. There was an article that somebody had written in Powder magazine in probably about 1990 about how Glenn Blake only showed up in the movies and the magazine because of his brash attitude and his mohawk. And
that's right.
And I remember I wrote this little mini editorial in Powder saying that, Glenn Blake was in fact a freestyle skier, a former mogul skier, and he had this amazing foundation as a racer and a mogul skier. And that's why he was able to do these things and to ski the extreme because he had the independent foot steering and all this stuff. So I wrote this short editorial and it said Sven Brunso, Prescott, Arizona, even though I was living in Tucson at the time. I got a call from a photographer, said his name was Mike Padian and he lived in Phoenix and he was getting into ski photography. Here again, just another totally random, out of the air thing. And I'm like, how did you get my number? He's like, oh, I called the editor at Powder magazine and he gave me your phone number. So anyway, would you be interested in doing some photos? I said, sure, that would be great. So we decided to meet at 6 o'clock in the morning at Denny's at the bottom of the road that goes up to Mount Lemon. And here again, Mount Lemon was having all these super snowy years, and they had just gotten a couple feet of snow. I walked through Denny's. There's one person in Denny's, and it's a guy with an eye patch on, scraggly little guy, this like sad looking mustache. And I'm like, well, obviously this guy is not the ski photographer. So I walk back out, wait a few minutes, just long before cell phones or whatever. I'm like, maybe I have the wrong day, whatever. I wait about 15 minutes, go back in, still the only guy there. And I'm like, are you Mike? And he's like, yeah. Are you Sven? I'm like, yeah. It's like, okay. It's like, well, I'm blind in this eye, but I can still shoot photos, and let's go out and shoot. So we went up that day, and the very first thing we do is we're driving up. We drive about 45 minutes up the road up to Mount Lemon, and there's about 2 feet of snow on the ground at the
Wow.
same elevation as the saguaro cactus. Go, should we get a picture of skiing in front of the saguaro cactus? I'm like, yeah, sure. I've got some rock skis, whatever. So sure enough, we make some turns in front of the saguaro cactus. It's knee-deep snow. I'm skiing on rocks, but I thought it was kind of novel that I'm skiing in front of some saguaro cactus. Unbeknownst to me, this would never ever happen again, that there would be enough snow to ski in front of the
Right.
saguaro cactus, but it's just kind of the way my luck was back in those days. So then we drive up a little further up the road, find this 10, 15-foot cliff with this kind of cool backdrop. So I probably hit this thing, I don't know, 8 or 10 times.
Whoa.
And, back scratcher, got my neon one-piece suit on, the whole bit. That very first day, that very first setup that we did going off the cliff turned into being a postcard.
Damn.
Postcard for every ski area. I think in the Western United States the next year, there used to be companies that would sell photos to ski areas. So I've got a postcard from Telluride, Crested Butte, Park City,
Ah.
Lake Tahoe, and it's all a shot from Southern Arizona.
That's so
Me
funny.
doing a back scratcher, but it's just kind of a generic background with some pine trees. So, like, yeah, immediately the first time we shot, we started getting stuff published. And I would say for the next couple years while I was there finishing up school, we would shoot 8 or 10 times a year up at the Snow Bowl. He got the contract to shoot all the marketing materials for the Snow Bowl. And then when I moved up to Durango in 1992. He came up to Durango and we shot for a couple years. Without him, I definitely probably wouldn't have gotten into the photo business. So
Which is hilarious because that ended up springboarding you into being called by Ski Magazine the most photographed published skier in history. And that's an incredible accolade. You've been featured in over 135 magazine covers and more than 2,500 published photos, which is insane. And so I'm just curious, how does it feel to have that kind of a title? And what do you think contributed to achieving such widespread recognition in the ski photography world?
It was kind of a combination of some good fortune, some luck for sure, and then just working really hard. My dad was a really hard worker. When I told him that I kind of wanted to get into being a professional skier, he said, "You're never going to have the skills or the background that these kids did that grew up in Colorado or grew up in a ski town, went to a ski academy, whatever." He goes, "The only thing that you can do to differentiate yourself is to outwork everybody else."
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been doing that kind of since day one. You
And
know,
how do you do that? What's your strategy?
a lot of it has to do with the ski photography business is really hard to do. I think some people think a photographer just kind of stands on the side of a run and someone skis by and they get a picture. Couldn't be further from the truth of how it all comes together, especially when you get into the backcountry. Any photo you see that is a powder skiing photo, you have one chance to nail that photo. It's not like mountain biking where you can just, the dirt doesn't change. You can do it over and over and over, shoot it from different angles. If the athlete makes a mistake or the photographer makes a mistake, shots out of focus, you just do it again. I tell people I'm a professional hiker that gets to ski on the way down. That's really what it amounts to. I out hike everybody else.
Ah,
I'd say over the last 30-year career, probably 20 years of that has been primarily in the backcountry or skiing off piste. And even if you're at a ski area, sometimes taking lifts is not the fastest way to get shots done, especially if you're racing people, especially if you're racing people for fresh snow. Sometimes you make 2 or 3 turns. The photographer is like, "Hey, can you move over 15 feet and make your turn up just a little bit higher?" Well, it could take 15 minutes to ski down, wait in a lift line, go back up. And by the time you come back, that postage size pocket of snow is vaporized. It's gone. Someone else has hit it. So it's easier just to take the skis off. My big break into kind of what I would say is like exploding onto the scene. There was a photographer that lived in British Columbia in Fernie named Henry Georgie.
hmm.
And in the late 90s, Henry was kind of the it guy. And I'm like, all right, this guy is the best. If I really want to do this, I should go work for the best and learn from someone who's made a living shooting some of the best ski athletes in the business. So I called Henry and I said, hey, I would love to come shoot with you. And he's like, okay, get yourself to Fernie and we'll go shoot. So we
Great.
kind of tracked the weather, and there was a good cycle of weather coming through kind of mid-January. And then the weather was supposed to get better. So he's like, hey, you need to, get up to Fernie and be here, by this date, like next week. Got off work one night at 11 o'clock, drove for 30 hours straight through this
Wow.
insane snowstorm, roll into Fernie at about 6:30 in the morning, just as Henry's packing up his minivan. And he's like, all right, load the van. We don't even have time to go inside and take a leak. I already got a cup of coffee in the van for you. I move all my stuff into his van, and we're in Fernie. Okay. And, Fernie is like a place that people were coming from all over the world at that time to ski. It was like this powder mecca. And I'm like, why are we leaving Fernie to go someplace else?
Uh-huh.
But we drive a couple hours over to this place, to Golden, Colorado, to this little ski area called Whitetooth.
Oh, yeah.
So
Wow.
he's like, all right, well, we're going to go. I had never in my life had skins on, but he had told me to bring some skins. So sure enough, I take my skins out, try to figure out how to peel the paper off them. I don't even have them cut to my ski length. So we take the little double chairlift up at Whitetooth, slap my skins on, and we skin, I don't know, for maybe an hour and a half. And he's like, we are eventually going to break out of this cloud deck and we're going to be above the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Colorado where we do not get inversion. So never in my life have I ever popped out of the clouds. So sure enough, it's getting brighter and brighter. We bust out of the clouds, skin for like another hour. We're on top of this ridge line, and every direction you look, there's these sharp peaks of the Selkirks and the Purcells sticking out of this cloud deck. I am beat because my legs, muscles I never even knew I had were sore because I've used all these devices to get up there. I'd never encountered in my life. So there was another skier with us, which Henry had worked with before. And so Henry's like, well, I'm going to give him the first shot to nail these things. And I'm like, oh, totally understand. So there's like this kind of sweet powder shot, and the guy misses it. He goes in the wrong spot. And the photographer's like, hey, you got to be like right on, because I'm sucking up the mountains with this long lens. And if you were a foot too far to the left or a foot too close to me, you're out of focus, ruins the shot. Let's try it again. Kid goes again, blows the shot. It's like, Sven, you're up. So sure enough, there's this little cliff. It is a 5-foot rock. It's not even a cliff. It's a rock. It's got some snow. And he's like, can you just come off there, kind of cross your skis up, get kind of tight? I go, I hit the rock, get nice and tight in the air, stick the landing. That shot, the very first frame I ever shot with Henry Georgie, was 10 covers.
No way. 10 covers.
10 magazine covers.
Unbelievable.
So I land that shot. Henry's screaming. He's all excited. He's like, all right, let's go up. Let's move over. Let's ski this panel of fresh snow. Go over, do this 3-turn line. He's like, hey, the first turn's kind of your setup. The second turn that you're going to make over there, that's the sweet spot. You're going to have this cold smoke in the air from your first turn. Got all this texture in the foreground. Ski the next line. Boom, make the turn. Cover a men's journal.
No way. Men's journal.
You got a men's journal the next year.
Man.
So this one day with Henry Georgie, and we probably shot 25 setups that day.
Wow, that's a lot.
We're above the clouds. And that one day generated over 80 published photos, including
80.
Including 10 covers from the one little jump turn off the rock, and then the men's journal cover. The way the ski business used to work when you were dealing with print was you would work really hard one year, and then you didn't know until the next year if any of your work was actually going to show up.
Right.
And that was back in the day of slide film. So there was 2 issues. You would take the picture and you didn't know if you had it or not.
Right.
Because you had to wait 2 weeks to get your slide film back.
Oh,
so you couldn't do a jump and look at the camera like you can now and say, all right, yeah, you got it. You got the grab. That's sweet. Or wow, that turn's perfect. We don't need to do it again. You'll be like, wow, I think I got it, but we should probably try it again just to make sure we got it in the can.
Yep.
Part of why those photos became so valuable and so many photos got published from that day was another serendipitous thing. The good fortune of Whitetooth became Kicking Horse.
Right.
So when Kicking Horse first came out, there was no photos for the marketing of Kicking Horse. So for the first 3 years that Kicking Horse kind of existed, they used those photos that we had taken in the backcountry above Whitetooth, because that is what is now part of the ski area at Kicking Horse. So they were really cool photos.
Right.
But they also, like, they showed up in ads for Kicking Horse, and his magazines were, wanting to talk about, because Kicking Horse was kind of one of the first new big ski areas to be built in North America for a long time. So there's a lot of hype around it. So those photos were extra valuable, because of the timing. But because of that, and because Henry and I developed this really good working relationship together, he started to come to Colorado and started to shoot with me here in the winter, and then he came back that next spring. So this would have been, at this point, spring of 1999. We would shoot skiing in the morning, mountain biking in the afternoon, and then that next fall, I walked into the newsstand. We had a newsstand here in Durango, and at the same time, I had the cover of Powder, cover of Men's Journal, and the cover of Bike.
Holy shit! What year was that?
That would have been fall of 1999.
Jeez, that's a domination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but those photos that were taken, the photo that was on the cover of Men's Journal was taken in January of 1997 and showed up in the fall of 1999. So it was just, the lag time, the way the photo business works. And still to this day, there will be photos that'll show up in magazines now that are 4 or 5 years old.
Of course.
That either hadn't been in front of that photo editor, or now it fits a story they need, or it just kind of matriculated back, and the photo editor at the time, didn't like it, and now there's a new photo editor that has a different eye. That was kind of the launch pad. Then it made it easy to get travel budget from sponsors, because you had to be able to show them, send them tear sheets and say, hey, last year I got 10 magazine covers and had 30 shots published. And I could go to the sponsors I worked with, the Oakleys and the Fishers, and say, hey, I know for a fact how much it costs to buy a full page ad in Ski Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting you 3 full pages in Ski Magazine. So with your logo showing, so I know it is worth this. And I'm just asking for a small pittance of what you would pay for advertising to help fund these trips that I'm going to go on with photographers to get you more exposure.
Great strategy.
And it all fell back to having business degrees. And from the very get-go, my dad said, hey, you have to treat this as a business. You have to outwork everybody, and you have to understand that this is a hobby for almost everybody else. And the other people, the ski industry spits out so-called pro skiers every 2 or 3 years. And so to actually make a career out of it, you have to always be adapting and stand out and make yourself, an asset, these brands. And that's what I did. And that's all, rooted in what my dad taught me, that it's a business. And a lot of it is being incredibly persistent. As marketing directors in the ski industry, maybe in the outdoor industry, radio silence and non-responsiveness is an acceptable way to communicate.
It is.
Day and age. I tell people trying to break into the business that it's kind of the 30-to-1 ratio. You better be willing to send 30 emails for everyone that you're going to get back.
Yeah.
If you're lucky and somebody is really good, maybe it's a 10-to-1 ratio. But if you're not persistent, you're never gonna. It's always been that way, but it's harder and harder because marketing directors are dealing with very small budgets. Athlete programs are being wiped out kind of across the board.
Yeah.
Marketing is a very easy thing for the bean counters to truncate, because if you just cut marketing, it all flows to the bottom line. And a lot of people don't necessarily understand how marketing works. And sometimes marketing's not really measurable. So that, for me, that was one of those things that even back in the day when it was only print media, if I had a shot that would show up in Powder Magazine and I had 8 logos that were visible, I'd buy 8 copies of Powder Magazine.
Yeah, of course.
And cut out the tear sheet 8 times and send it to 8 different sponsors. And I would do that every time the magazine came out.
I like that. And you've, again, like you said, you've been doing this for 30 years, had some of your sponsors for 30 years, incredibly long, successful career. So you must have some great stories about, being on the mountain. So I'm just curious about, memorable moments or achievements. And what I always love to ask is, what might be your scariest story and what might be your funniest story?
Well, I would say my scary, I've got 2 cool stories, I guess, that would kind of be on the scary ski story side. The first one was in 1994. I had decided that I was going to take a few months and move to Chamonix. That was kind of the epicenter of, the extreme ski movement at the time. So I went over there probably in early March, and I was going to stay, March and April, maybe into May, depending on the snow. I was all gung ho. I'd seen the ski movies, and I didn't have even an inkling about big mountain danger. I knew nothing about avalanches. I didn't know anything about route finding. I was completely naive. I just thought you showed up. So I remember I went into one of the guide bureaus there, and there's this old time guide, probably in his 60s, maybe 70 years old. So I spread out this map of the valley, and I'm asking him for some input. Show me where to go. Where do I want to go to ski the extreme? So he pulls out a city map and puts it on top of my big topographical map, and he circles the cemetery.
Oh,
He
wow.
goes, this is where you need to go and spend your first afternoon in Chamonix. And I'm like, what a jackass. What is this guy doing? He's like, no, he goes, I'm serious. You go do that this afternoon, and then you come see me tomorrow. So sure enough, I take my map, walk down to the graveyard in Chamonix, and I spend about an hour walking around, and you start to look at all the burial plots, and you realize that there's a lot of people in that cemetery that 17, 18, 20, 21 died on the mountain, body never recovered, soul lost to the mountainside somewhere. And while I'm sitting there, reading these gravestones, I see the Aiguille Midi teleferique in the background, accessing 9,000 vertical feet, like right there, realizing that in a 10, 12-minute ride, I too could be, at the doorstep of my gravestone. And so it was this really like grounding moment. But I'm like, wow, I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. I probably need to go out with a guide or need to start small. So then, next day I went back, talked to the guide, and he said, hey, here's where you need to go. You go ski these runs at the ski area where people can see you from the lift. There's no crevasse danger. You ski these. These mountains have crappy snow right now. So go ski the crappy snow. Ski these lines with no mistakes in the crappy snow over and over, and then come back and see me. And so anyway, over the course of a couple months, I surely left with my tail between my legs, realizing that I needed to learn a lot more about the mountains. But that experience was a very big eye-opener for me. So I got scared straight, I should say, at that point. And then probably one of the scariest days of my life was in 1999. I was in Europe for a couple month photo shoot with Henry Georgie, and they had this incredible cycle of storms in January of 1999. And we were in Verbier, Switzerland, and I think they'd gotten something like 3 meters of snow in 72 hours. And Verbier is extremely avalanche prone anyway. And here again, I'm a little smarter at this point. I've taken some avalanche classes, but in my mind, I at that point hadn't spent a ton of time in the Alps. And I'm like, all right, well, if you're getting off a lift and traversing, you're probably pretty safe. So get off this cable car, do a big traverse out. We're on this beautiful, like 2,000-foot face. In hindsight, super kind of the perfect convexity on the slope, but made it good for shooting because there was this nice steep rollover. So we go out, shoot the line, ski it for photos. It's great. We ski back down, take the lift up, and the entire slope is gone. I mean, completely gone to the grass.
Whoa.
It is like slid, the entire snowpack has slid. So unbeknownst to me, there was no snow. This is like a south-facing slope, had no snow before this big storm cycle, and the storm came in warm, so all this water had percolated down through the snowpack. So you basically had, now 8-10 feet of snow sitting on top of this liquid interface with these weeds that were smashed down. So all we see is this face of grass, and the snow that we're still standing on at this point it should have had 4 tracks on it because we had been through it twice, but now there's 6 tracks on it. So we realize that somebody has followed our tracks out there.
Oh,
Probably
God.
caused the avalanche. We look down a couple thousand feet and there's just massive avalanche debris everywhere.
Jeez.
So miraculously, we ski down to the deposition zone where this avalanche is dumped, and we find the 2 guys.
No.
They were from Great Britain, had lost all their gear, skis, poles, the whole bit. One guy was kind of pinned under a chunk of snow, but could breathe. The other guy was kind of buried up to his waist. Extracted him, got them out of there. I mean, they were almost on the piste at this point. Got them off, got help. And a couple hours later, 4 people were killed that same day skiing on the piste in Verbier. There was someone else skiing off piste and had brought a big avalanche down, and you watched the whole thing happen. Avalanche came down onto the piste, killed skiers. So on that day, I kind of realized that I don't have a responsibility to other people on the mountain, but I was irresponsible, went out into a zone I never should have been skiing at. And I probably, in hindsight, should have been the one that triggered the avalanche, really should have been in it. But there was two people that were just very fortunate that could have followed my tracks and, and been killed. So
That's intense, man. To think that you skied that slope and 8 feet of snow just ripped off the mountain all the way to the dirt, and that could have been you is terrifying. And then I really love the story of the old guide in Chamonix telling you on day one you go to the cemetery. I
yeah,
mean, that's the kind of stuff you see in a movie or a book.
yeah. And you
That
walk
is
out of
an
there saying, look, I got this
incredible
guy is a
story.
complete jackass. Like he's French, he
Uh-huh.
is textbook French, being rude, telling me to go to the cemetery. And I'm like, wow, that was the best lesson that any guide could have ever given me.
Yeah, it might have even saved
Really.
your life, right? 'Cause,
Yeah. Oh,
the
absolutely. Yeah.
Aguinaldo and
I had no business in Chamonix at that point in my life. 24 years old.
yeah, wow, that's absolutely intense, man.
Yeah.
Well, I love your hearing stories about your attention to detail, which I think is probably a big part of your success, especially as a photographer, or sorry, as a skier for photographers. Because legendary photographer Liam Doran once shared a story about you and your exactitude. And this is his quote. I love this quote. On our first shoot, we were driving through the San Juans, and Sven pointed out the window and said something like, "The sun will hit that line at 7:23 a.m. And if we start at 6:14 a.m., we should be in position." I was like, "Is this guy for real?" And he was completely right to the exact minute. He's ridiculously helpful. Tell us a little bit more about that story and your attention to detail.
Yeah, it all goes back to, just trying to outwork everyone else. Not most, but I would say the other professional skiers I've been around on photo shoots and film shoots are kind of like bro bra. Yeah, let's just go, rip it. We're going to ski this line. And they don't really necessarily understand. They think that they're the big piece of the equation, that there's not going to be a great ski shot without their talent. Maybe that's true. A great ski shot requires a great photographer and a great skier. Otherwise, it's just a great landscape shot. But I always wanted to do the things that I could to make the photographer's job a little bit easier. So in that case where Liam was, I'm not Nostradamus. I knew that he was coming to shoot, and so I went up the day before he came, or maybe a couple days before he came. I kind of scoped out some zones of where we needed to be, and I kind of knew, because I have a photographic eye, like where some cool ski shots might be. So I put the skin track in the day before so that it would like kind of set up and we'd be able to make better time. And I knew
Smart.
that it took me an hour and 15 minutes to skin up there, putting the trail in. So I knew, because I had been up there, like, hey, the light kind of hits this face at 7:25 in the morning. Now we're 2 days further into the calendar, so it's going to probably be 7:23 in the morning. And I know that if it's going to take an hour to skin up there, let's give ourselves an hour and 15 minutes so we're not rushing and we have time to get up there and, get skins off and all that stuff, because it's so stressful when you're racing the light and the sun's coming up and you're like, oh, we're missing it. We got to get up there. And then you're racing and then it feels like the shots are forced. So the photo editor at Backcountry is looking at 50,000 images and he's going to narrow it down to 100. You better be sure that your images are pretty special. That a lot of times that is being in the right place at the right time, knowing where the snow is. And if Liam drives down here from Breckenridge, we're not going to get in the car, skin up someplace, and just fall into like the epic shot that's got the cool texture.
Hard work.
It's hard. It's hard work, and it's me out there, putting the time in. Sometimes I'll skin up someplace and say, wow, that spot only works in December when the sun's way low on the horizon. Now it's blown out because the sun's too bright when the sun comes up. Or there's been times where I've got a shot in my mind of where the sun is going to come up, and I have to think, all right, the photographer's going to be here in a week. And I know as we move into the spring, the sun moves further north. So there's this little pinnacle that is a degree further on the ridge line. And in a week, is the sun going to come up behind that pinnacle and cost us 15 minutes? So we're going to miss the beautiful pink light of first light because this pinnacle is going to block out the sun. So where do I need to be? Or maybe we shoot that the first day is here instead of the sixth day that is here. I'm pretty unorthodox. Most photographers and athletes, the relationship is the photographer sees the shot and tries the best they can to communicate to the athlete what they need to do to make the shot come together. I'm kind of the opposite. I see the shot and then I will talk to the photographer and say, hey, what do you think if I come around this tree here, make my setup turn there, and if I make it my third turn, I can throw the snow up into the shadow, it'll be backlit, and you got this peak in the background, and they'll look at it and be like, oh, that looks really cool. I see what you're seeing. Or they'll hike around and kind of play around with it, but that's me telling them like, hey, I think if I make the turn right here, that's going to be super dynamic. It has the potential to make a cool shot. I think it's a natural turn. And then I let them, sometimes they'll overrule me, but I'd say 75% of the photos that I do with Liam, I either see it or we see it together. And some athletes will go out and work with 10 or 12 photographers during the course of the year. I work with one or two.
Smart.
It's Liam, it's Grant Gunderson, it's Matthias Fredrickson, because it's so hard to build these relationships with people where they understand what you can and can't do. And
Right.
so often in ski photography, it is the photographer throwing a snowball or the athlete throwing a snowball if they happen to have a better angle, like throwing the snowball down the hill, and then you guide off the snowball and say you need to be 2 feet downhill from that, or the apex of your turn needs to come to the snowball, but bring it a little bit towards me. It's not like shooting video where you just say you can't go any further than that. Just ski it top to bottom. I'll get what I get. When you're shooting photos, there are a lot of amazing skiers that you see in the movies that you never see in the ski magazines, either because they're not patient enough to stand around or to hike for the photos, because a lot of the ski photos are 2 or 3 turns at a time, and then you get the one turn that you're shooting, whereas video are bigger lines, or they just don't have, everything is super magnified when you're doing photos. It's kind of an unusual way to ski, because if you think about coming in and making a turn in powder, for example, and you're angulating your turn, if your downhill arm is kind of even with your knee and your shin kind of at that same angle, and the photographer is looking across the hill, you look like a snowboarder because they can't see your pole. So you have to actually think as you're coming into the turn, I actually have to reach my hand out, have the pole completely out of the snow and be reaching downhill, fall line, exaggerated, and I'm making that next pole plant so it looks like I'm a skier. That's not the way that you would normally ski down the mountain, but that's really the only way. And there are a lot of amazing ski photos that never get published because you can't see the pole.
Right.
And so it is this weird way to ski. And to be honest with you, I shoot so often now that sometimes I'll find myself free skiing at the ski area. And as you're skiing, especially if you look at like point of view footage, like you see that you're like really reaching out, I'm almost artificially reaching that pole out to plant it a lot sooner than you would, instead of kind of swinging, your turn, and then your pole plant is basically what initiates, your unweighting, your angulation into the next turn. So, sometimes you're carrying, your work into your free skiing, but
Well, I love that it all comes back to your hard work, even your exactitude on, the sun will hit that line at 7:23. It's really nerdy, but it's also hard work, right? Like you'd actually been up there the day before,
yeah,
scoping
and
out
I'm
what
my own
time
worst.
is
I'm
that.
my own worst critic. At the end of the day, a lot of athletes will do what we call chimping. Especially in the digital age. You do a photo, you make a turn, or you go off a cliff or whatever. Then you ski up to the photographer, like, let me take a look at it, kind of scroll through it. Oh, did I get the grab? Was my body position good? I'm guilty of that. Sometimes you do it. Usually at this point, after 30 years of doing it, I kind of know if I nailed the turn or not. And the best way I can describe it is if you're a golfer and you hit the perfect golf shot, you never felt the impact of the golf ball. It's so
Right.
smooth that you never feel it. And for me, when I make a turn that looks really good on camera, it's like I didn't feel it. It's like I didn't even make the turn. You come out of it, you have all this energy, it shoots you naturally like right into your next turn, and it kind of is almost seamless. But then you're like, yeah, okay, I think I got a pretty good turn. But at the end of the night, when we're sitting and looking at the computer, that's when I go through every single frame, because I'm looking at it and the photographer's like, yeah, we got lots of bangers, there's lots of great stuff. And I'm like, I want to see what I can do better when we go out tomorrow.
Right.
Because I'm always improving. I've never once gone out and had a perfect day of skiing. There's always very rarely do I have a shot and look at it and say, wow, if I did that 1,000 times, I don't think I could do it any better.
This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Calling all skiers and snowboarders, escape to the snowy peaks of Europe, Japan, China, or Canada with Club Med. Their more than 20 all-inclusive mountain resorts offer unparalleled convenience and endless adventures. Explore world-class ski resorts, indulge in authentic gourmet dining, and unwind with lively après-ski activities. Let Club Med take care of everything so you can simply relax and enjoy your ski getaway. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to discover your ski paradise. Perfectionist, you work hard and you clearly have very high energy. And so I'm really curious how those three things come together when you're actually working in your other capacity in marketing and as a business person. So it's been said that you sometimes work 60-hour weeks. Supposedly in 2021, you didn't take a single day off, with your lightest week clocking in about 45 hours. So what drives this intense dedication, and where have you worked and where are you working now? Where do you direct that energy?
I think part of it is generational. I kind of came from a generation where you just always ask someone to give you a chance. Let me get my foot in the door and show you what I can do. Durango is an expensive place to live. So when my girlfriend, who became my wife, when we moved here in 1992, we had nothing. And so we knew the only way we could build a life in Durango is just to work really hard. So we worked 2 or 3 jobs. I would wait tables at a restaurant at breakfast, and then do, work during the day, like driving Jeep tours or, maybe tuning skis or whatever, and then waited tables at night. And then I, worked my way into managing a restaurant at night so I could ski during the day and make a little bit more money. But, I think it's important for people to understand that I haven't had this 3-decade run as a pro skier traveling around the world. I think sometimes people get this idea that I'm heli skiing 300 days a year and that it's really easy. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. I have never in my life not had at least 2 jobs. There's been years where I've skied 277 days,
Yeah.
shooting 100 days a winter and worked, 1, if not 2 jobs. Always have had a full-time job outside of skiing. Had the job managing the restaurant for 10 years. And then that morphed into being the vice president of sales and marketing for Purgatory Resort
Wow.
in Durango. And I did that for 10 years. And the great thing about that was, I got to ski every day, but the really busy part of that job was in the summertime, kind of gearing everything up for the ski season. So once the snow started to fly in November, December, it was really busy, compressed business. And once you got through Christmas, then I had the ability to kind of do my work remotely and I could start to take these ski projects and kind of travel around the world. But it always blew people's minds that, we'd be in Japan and we would be out shooting all day. And at the end of the day, the photographer and the athletes would be, going and, getting some sake and going to the, have some sushi, go around, go on a pub crawl or whatever. And I would plug my computer in and go do my day job, and sit there for 8 or 10 hours, a lot of times like missing dinner because I was working or I was doing a virtual meeting or whatever. After 10 years of being at the ski area, I went to work for a gentleman named Rob Haggart, who owned a company called a Photofolio that designed software for photographers to build custom websites. That was spectacular. Rob was a ski bum, used to live in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, worked as a photo editor for Wade McCoy up there. And he was like super excited that I was doing these things. And he's like, you got to do these trips. You got to take them. And he was amazing because he said, I don't care if you work 40 hours a week. I don't care if you work 4 hours a week. As long as we're making sales and you're doing the marketing, go ski.
Right.
So I'm like, wow, that's kind of sweet. I'm not having to work 40 hours a week for Rob. I'm getting to take all these great ski trips. I'm going to Japan. I'm going to Iceland. I'm going to Norway. I'm going to Canada, spending big chunks of time in the Alps. So I decided that, what do you do in a mountain town? You become a realtor.
Of
So
course.
got my real estate license. So I'm working for Rob doing Photofolio. I'm selling real estate. I'm working 30 or 40 hours a week doing real estate. I'm working sometimes, 20, 30, 40 hours for Rob when things were really busy. And then I'm skiing. So in the midst of all this, I've got a wife and I've got a couple kids. And so needless to say, I had about a 15-year period where I somehow existed on 2 to 3 hours a night of sleep.
No way. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was super unhealthy, but it was,
Did that affect you at all? How would that affect you? Like not getting
when
sleep?
you're in it, you don't think that it's affecting you. And in hindsight, surely was. I try to be a very patient person, but I probably, because I was lacking some sleep, probably wasn't as patient as maybe I could have been at times. I think a big piece of it is my family was extremely supportive of what I was doing. My wife knew that skiing was my dream. She would have been happy if I did nothing but skied and she was just, making money and I was making whatever I could from skiing. But, there again, we lived in a mountain town. It was very expensive. She was a school teacher. So between a skier's income and a school teacher's income, you're not going to live in Durango and support a family. So
Yeah, could you speak to that? Sorry to interrupt. It's difficult to make money as a professional skier, and like most skiers, pro skiers, you also have to have a real job. How do pro skiers make money? And was it difficult for you to make money?
Yeah, it was super difficult to make money. It was easier when I was first starting out because in the early '90s, ski media was still a very big deal. There was
Hmm.
probably at least six major ski magazines in the United States. The ski industry was starting to slow down, but still approachable to the middle class. Was growing every year. People were buying equipment. People were buying ads. And so the ski magazines, when they would send you on a trip, they could afford a writer, a photographer, an athlete, sometimes even two athletes.
Hmm.
And they would even sometimes, say, hey, we've got a $2,000 budget for each person. And so then if you were really savvy, you would reach out to the tourism offices and find out if you could get your trip supported. So see if Swiss Air would,
Smart.
give you plane tickets, and you would go somewhere in Switzerland that would give you food and accommodations. And then a guide service would give you a guide, and a skier would give you lift tickets. And so if you could do that and you were really savvy, then that $2,000 or whatever you were getting from the magazines could actually be money you got paid for. I guess where I was able to really stockpile things is I realized pretty early on that the industry was changing, and I could kind of see that magazines were going, out of business, getting
Mhm.
thinner, fewer ads. They surely didn't have budgets to pay for athletes to go on trips. So I'm like, all right, well, what's going to happen if they can only afford to send two people, or if the Swiss Tourism Board will only support two people? Well, they're going to always support a photographer. So if I want to be the skier, I better learn how to be a writer as well.
Smart.
So I hate writing. I don't think I'm very good at it, but I can write a travel log. I can write a travel story. So what I started to do was I would either work with other photographers that could also ski for the camera. So I could take pictures of them. They could take pictures of me. I could write, just kind of made myself indispensable. So that when usually a writer is the one that pitches a magazine to the story, writes a query and sends it to the magazine. If the magazine picks it up and wants to give you an assignment, then you go out and you find a photographer. Maybe the magazine assigns a photographer to it. I was always a little bit unusual because as the athlete slash writer, I was the one pitching the stories a lot of times to a photographer and say, let's go in together and show our body of work to the Swiss Tourism Board. Or if we want to go to St. Anton, let's show them your work as a photographer, my work as an athlete, my work as a writer, and kind of make it so they can't say no.
Smart.
And so you kind of you wrapped it all up and you put a bow on it. So you knew that if the tourism office was getting 10 pitches a year, that they were going to have to do some work to assimilate the other nine and make them come together. And I'm like, I'm going to do it all for you. I'm going to make your job easier. I know by looking at the calendar that this is off peak in Italy, for example, that there's not a school holiday. So we are willing to come early March to make it easier on your budget to get a hotel to support us. Can we tie these other things into it? And then I would go to my sponsors and say, hey, I'm going to Cortina, Italy the first week of March. Can you get me some of next year's samples that I can shoot with on this trip? Because now by the 10th of March, you're going to have photos of next year's stuff for all your marketing materials that you're going to need. And so it was a no-brainer for them. They're like, wow, someone's coming to us, making our job easier instead of us figuring out who's going to go out and shoot these and hiring a photographer that's going to be really expensive because we have to pitch a professional photographer. In all the years I've skied for the camera, I have probably made enough money to buy the piece of land that my house is on right now. I was able to pay cash for that land that I saved up for 15 years,
That's
sponsorship
great.
money. So it used to be when you shot with photographers, you would get a percentage of stuff that got published when there was a lot of print media. And then since I never had a ton of ski talent anyway, I was never going to be the kind of guy on the hill that was skiing and people on the chairlift were going to be like, oh my God, look at that guy. That guy must be a pro. The
Uh-huh.
only time I've ever been the best skier on the mountain is when I'm out skiing by myself in the backcountry. The latest iteration of being able to combine my passion for skiing and flexibility with the job to still being able to ski is currently I'm the director of marketing for Lakey.
Uh-huh.
Ski poles and gloves and trekking poles. It's a German company, but got an office here in Buffalo, New York. I work remotely from my home in Durango, Colorado, but it's a great position because, instead of having a job selling insurance or caskets or something like that, even when I'm working, it's a corporate job, I work a ton of hours, but I'm selling fun. I'm
Hmm.
marketing, poles so people can go backpacking or go skiing or keep their hands warm when they're on the ski lift. So it's been a way, all the jobs from managing a restaurant when I could work nights and ski days, all the way through, having this executive position, in a big company. It's always been rooted in skiing. I still, get to ski almost every day. Sometimes it's only an hour or two, where it used to be 8 or 9 hours a day, but it's great. But it's
I love
you and
it.
I hanging out, talking about skiing, and boy, if this is what I'm getting paid to do, I'm pretty damn happy.
But you mentioned that coming back from these injuries, and I think we all love these injury stories. I know that I do. So from my understanding, and this could be different now, that you've had 5 or 6 or 7 knee surgeries, 5 foot and ankle surgeries, 2 back surgeries, 6 broken ribs, a punctured lung, neck injuries, numerous muscle sprains and tears. And I'm just so curious from all of this, there's got to be some great stories. What might be one of your gnarliest injury stories?
I think one of the most painful injuries was on a photo shoot up at Purgatory. I had been in the Alps for about 6 weeks, and I came back, and it was April. I think the ski area may have actually been closed. No, actually ski area was open. I've been in the Alps for a long stretch of time. Hadn't been skiing at Purgatory on a daily basis, and we were doing a photo shoot for Fisher Skis, and we needed to shoot first thing in the morning. The photographer and I got early access up on the lift, and he had a ladder and he was climbing. We were shooting carving skis. And so he
Okay.
was on the ladder and looking down with his fisheye lens, and I was going to make turns and kind of like turn right under the ladder, and he was going to shoot and get the shot. And then every time we were shooting, I think 5 or 6 pair of skis. So every time he's like, "Yes, we got the shot. Move on to the next pair." I would ski to the bottom of the mountain, swap out skis, come back up, get another snowmobile ride up to where we're going to shoot. So I'm skiing down. I know the mountain like the back of my hand. It's my home mountain, but I haven't been skiing there for 6 weeks. It's springtime, and so I'm skiing down, going really, really fast. And the last big steep head wall before the base of Purgatory is kind of a very short expert run, almost always groomed. And I didn't realize until I was midway over the head wall, probably 15 feet off the ground, that it was not groomed, but was massive bumps. And it's early April, probably 7 in the morning. These bumps are rock hard. And so all I'm thinking about is like, I don't want to like blow up my knee or my shoulder. So I'm like flying, and I realize I'm going to hit the uphill side of a bump. So I kind of turn at the last minute and take it all on my back,
Ooh.
slam into the bump, not knocked out, slither to the bottom of the slope there, almost to the base of the lift. And I knew something was pretty wrong. Couldn't catch my breath. That was the first
Yuck.
thing. I knew I'd broken some ribs, but so I went in. Fortunately, there was like a ski patrol clinic at the bottom there. Went in, said, "Hey, I'm having some issues. I'm having trouble breathing." And they said, "Oh, well, yeah, you probably injured your ribs. Nothing we can really do for rib injury." Anyway, this is before cell phones or radios, so I have no way to get a hold of the photographer that's up on the mountain. So I asked someone from patrol if they'll snowmobile up there and tell them I'm hurt. And I drive down to Durango to the hospital. And long story short, I had ended up breaking 6 ribs. While I
Ooh.
was driving to the hospital, I punctured a lung.
Yeah.
Ended up having and had bruised my heart in the middle of doing
Oh
all this.
God.
So the impact was super painful, but I don't know if you've broken ribs and torn intercostal muscles, but I would say for a good 5 months after that, like every time I would sit up in bed or cough or sneeze or laugh, it would just bring tears to my eyes. It was
Oh
terrible.
God.
So that
Well, you've had a lot of injuries, a lot of surgeries. You're 53 years old. How is your body feeling now?
My the best I've felt in the last 30 years was probably a couple years ago. I had a stretch of a couple months where my body actually felt really good. And when you get to be this age, you know you're never going to wake up in the morning and not have aches and pains. You're just trying to
Especially as a skier.
mitigate the pain. And what really bothers you at 53 years old is when you wake up and something hurts, but you don't know why. If something's sore and you're like, "Oh, well, I had a crash or I had a bobble, or I did something yesterday, kind of took a fall or whatever, or I scraped my shin on a mountain bike ride." I know my shin hurts and it's explainable, but now I kind of wake up and it's like, gosh, I just had surgery on my left knee. Why is my right knee hurting? My right knee is supposed to be the good one. So I guess I feel very fortunate at 53 to still be able to do what I'm doing. I could have lived a totally different lifestyle and had heart disease at 53 and maybe not had all the joint ailments that I do, but I'm super down right now because, I'm hurt and, I had the surgery, 5 weeks ago and it's not healing up as fast as I would like it. But
Oh, I'm sorry.
the reality is that, I'm going to bounce back from it. And I think the takeaway is that anybody out there that's injured, that's listening to this right now, if you've had a setback and you've had an injury, when you come back, things that you totally take for granted, like skiing a groomer or skiing on a day when maybe the snow is not that great, you don't take those things for granted anymore. You just love it. You're like, wow, I'm out. I'm riding the chairlifter. I'm skinning in the backcountry. And I'm just so excited to be here. And I don't feel perfect, but not many people at 53 probably do feel great. So from a cardiovascular standpoint, I'm probably healthier than I was when I was 25 years old.
So I love that. And in addition to your injuries, you've experienced some very significant personal loss, including the tragic passing of your wife, who took her own life on Christmas Day in 2015. And I've experienced some tragic loss in my life too. And I'm so curious, how did you cope with such a profound loss in your life?
Yeah, so losing my wife, was a huge blow. We were extremely close. She was my number one cheerleader. She was, for sure the reason that I was able to kind of chase this dream. And so to lose somebody that's your best friend and your romantic partner, and it was a surprise. I had no idea that it was coming. It deflates you. And when it happened, I had kind of decided that I was done skiing, that my kids at the time were, I think 15 and 17 years old. And I thought it was like super important that I just kind of detach from skiing and just be there to be the dad. And I'd always been like super present when I was with my kids, when I was, always very, very engaged. But that they were actually the ones that told me to get back on the mountain, to go back and ski, and that if mom knew that her passing would have stopped me from skiing, that would have been the worst thing in her life, that she couldn't have, possibly fathomed me not skiing, because she knew that was my passion and what defined me. For a couple of weeks after she died, I didn't ski. And then one of my really good friends that lives here, who's a photographer, called and said, "Hey, let's go up and shoot. I know there's this shot that you've been wanting to get at sunset. It was just at Purgatory, but there was like a small window of time each year where there's alpenglow on the mountains, and you can kind of be a silhouette." And he's like, "Let's go up and shoot it." So the first couple of times he called, I'm like, "No, I don't want to do it. I don't have the energy. I don't care. I don't care about skiing. I don't care about photos." And he didn't give up. So I'm finally like, "All right, I'll give you an hour." So we went up there. Lift was closed. We skinned up and we shot for probably, I don't know, hour and a half, almost 2 hours. Got the shot. And then I realized when that was over for 2 hours, I hadn't thought about anything but getting the shot.
Ah,
And I was hyper focused on making sure my form was, perfect. My hands were in the right spot and that I was over the mountains in the right spot. And I realized like, this is my therapy. Skiing and shooting and focusing on this is when I can totally separate. And I realized I thought maybe it was just skiing. So I started skiing, a few days later, and I would go up to the mountain for an hour or two every day and ski. And it wasn't skiing. It was the release for me. It was the focus of shooting, because after 3,000 days on skis, it kind of comes naturally. And I don't want to say you get bored skiing, but when I was skiing for the camera, I was super engaged with the photographer, talking about what we were going to do, seeing the vision and trying to make it come to fruition. And every hour that I spent, out in the field shooting, trying to set up and capture the perfect shot, or planning a shoot, or going out and putting in a skin track, checking the light, looking at weather forecast or whatever, it was an hour that I wasn't thinking about the turbulence of the trauma that I was experiencing. It was an hour that I was happy, and so I started to have some separation from my wife passing away, got clarity and realized that skiing is what I was supposed to be doing, and that shooting was really, the sweet spot. So that next year, I really got back into, shooting. I think I shot 50 or 60 days that next year, took a few big trips, and kind of realized, and those trips were all with Liam, and kind of realized that, hey, it's pretty cool that I am like traveling to exotic locations with one of my best friends, skiing, and hopefully these images that we're creating are going to show up next fall in a magazine, that someone is going to be inspired to go ski after looking at it. Or maybe someone's going to flip through this magazine having a bad day. Maybe they just lost a partner or a parent or whatever, and they love skiing, and maybe they're going to see this amazing image, and for a split second or a moment in time, it takes the mind off the struggles that they're dealing with. It's a complete mind fuck when you lose somebody to a suicide, for sure. And so I think that was a big, first few weeks, I was just trying to put the puzzle pieces together and figure out the hows and the whys, and did I miss the signs, and what could I have done differently? And then, yeah, a couple of friends are like, you make yourself crazy. All you can
Hmm.
do, the best way you can respect your wife's memory is to live your fullest life and believe that each person, a fellow pro skier named Matthias Giraud, super Frenchy, he had lost a sister to suicide, and he was one of the
Oh, wow.
first people to reach out to me. And he said, you have to respect that everybody is given a life, and how they choose to live it, or if they choose to end it, is not up to you. You just have to respect their decision and live with it. You may not agree with it, and it might make you unhappy, and you can be super angry with the situation your life is in after they choose to leave, but you can't be angry with the person. Be angry with the situation, but not with the person. And so that's something that, now after almost 9 years is, kind of stayed true. There's times when the kids are having a hard day, or we just really miss Beth, and just have to remember all the sweet spots and how much joy that she gave us, and being a great mom to the kids and a great wife to me and a great partner for 25 years. And the show must go on.
Well, I'm deeply sorry that that happened, and I really appreciate you sharing. And I really like Matthias's advice. I've never heard anything like that. I think that's really wise. That is a very wise way to put it, and a way that it leads to healing. So again, I'm so sorry, and I really appreciate you sharing all that with us. And yeah, the layers that are in that story are so challenging. What advice might you be able to give to others who are dealing with loss and looking for ways to heal?
I tell people that this journey is not linear. Some people that haven't experienced kind of a traumatic loss of somebody that's really close to them kind of think that you get a little bit better each day. If they haven't seen you for a few weeks, they automatically assume that you're going to be a few weeks better than you were the last time they had contact with you, and that's not the case. So don't expect the healing to be linear. I can tell you from losing my dad at a pretty young age. He was my best friend. I lost him when I was 25, and not a single day of my life went by that I didn't talk to him. Even when I was traveling in Europe or all over the globe, I still picked up the payphone and checked in every day. So losing him kind of taught me how to rebuild, and then my wife became my best friend. And then when I lost her, I think that the takeaway is start small, get through the next hour. For long, you string together a couple hours, and then maybe you have a really good day, and then you have a really bad day. And, but over time, what you learn, the pain subsides a bit, and you start to have the good memories and you remember the fond things. And when you look at your kids, you see the beautiful things, about your wife that showed up in your kids early on. When you lose them, it makes you really sad when you see those things, because it's a reminder that she's not here. But now I see them, and it's a reminder that she's not here, but a reminder of who she was. So people that are going through this, don't let anybody else tell you how the healing's supposed to be. Don't set arbitrary timelines of when you're going to get back out there. If you lose a spouse, like when you're going to get back out and date, or if you lose a friend, when you're going to go out and find really good friends. It all unfolds organically, and follow your heart.
Very well said. Here, here. And you also once said that surviving in the San Juan Mountains in Colorado, the world's most dangerous snowpack for 30 years. There are bold skiers and there are old skiers, but there are no old, bold skiers in the San Juan. Can you elaborate on this quote, and what makes the San Juan snowpack so dangerous?
Yeah, the San Juans are, super fickle mountain range. It's not just me calling them the most avalanche mountain range in the world. That's the avalanche experts are pretty much in agreement. The issue here is the elevation is very high. Most of the backcountry we're skiing, you're starting at 11,000 feet, and going up from there. So we get big storms that have a lot of high pressure in between storms. So it's not uncommon for us to get 2 to 3 feet of snow at a time, and then go weeks without snow. We don't have much humidity. It never rains. I've been here 30 years, and I think one time in 30 years have I seen it rain at elevation here during the winter months. And the biggest problem is we have these massive temperature swings. And the temperature gradient is probably the biggest problem in the snowpack anywhere, because it deteriorates the snowpack. So it's not uncommon for us to have days that might be 35 degrees for a high temperature and then be 20 below zero at night. And our snowpack is relatively shallow compared to coastal mountain ranges. So we have a thin snowpack. huge temperature swings, really intense sun. And so you have this, the warmth that comes up from the Earth's surface, and it goes through this thin snowpack at night when you get this radiational cooling. So all this heat goes back up into the atmosphere, and as the heat goes up at night and then comes back down from the intense sun during the day, it's just making all these crystals and facets, really dangerous. And so what happens is we get tons of layers and a lot of weak layers, and then we'll get a weak layer, a couple of weeks of no snow, and then a 2 to 3 foot storm cycle. And it's kind of like sitting on a house of cards. And so the big lines that you see in the San Juans, which are all extremely accessible, this might, in addition to being one of the most avalanche prone mountain ranges in the world, also has some of the best access in the world, right off the road to amazing lines. It's all eye candy that you really can't explore until the springtime. My comment about bold skiers and old skiers, if you're like me and you're 54, will call me an old skier in the San Juans. That's been because I surely have not been bold over my 30 years. There's a lot of lines that I would have loved to ski when they had great powder on them in January, February, and March. But you know that if you go ski them, you're rolling the dice, and there's a really good chance you're not coming home that night. So you just kind of like look at it, maybe take pictures of it, and kind of slide it away, file it away in your mental Rolodex. And then when things stabilize in late March and April, when we kind of go through long thaw and freeze cycles, then you go out and get on that stuff. If you had lived in like Lake Tahoe, for example, or the Pacific Northwest, and you moved to Silverton or Durango and drove up on the $1 million highway, Highway 550, and you just got out of your car in January and went skiing and skied the objectives that you would like to, you wouldn't last more than a few outings without getting smoked.
And speaking of avalanches, how many avalanches have you been in? And do you have any wild avalanche stories?
I have been very fortunate. I've been in one avalanche.
Wow.
It was in 1990 at Solitude, Utah, long before I knew anything about beacons. I think we were in Honeycomb Canyon, and just, wrong place at the wrong time. I was skiing a slope. They had just opened a rope, and we boot backed up to it. And as I was skiing down the slope, the guy I was with had kind of like was losing sight of me, and he traversed across at the same time that I was skiing down, and the slope released, and I'm skiing and, didn't have nearly as much ski experience under my belt. And I'm like, wow, this is the Utah bottomless that they're talking about. And then I realized that I was no longer in control of where I was going. And then like immediately I was pitched forward, snow in my nose, my eyeball or up in my eyelids.
Oh, God.
Super fortunate. I had my poles still attached to my hands and had the straps, and the tip of my pole was, I was bent, face down. My hand was, back by my feet, and the tip of my pole was sticking out. So my buddy skied down to me, pulled on my pole. It was still attached to me. He dug down, and in 90 seconds,
Wow.
had my airway cleared out. So I never even blacked out.
How was that
Um,
90 seconds?
it was terrifying because I didn't really know what had happened, and didn't know, that it wasn't like I was wishing I'd had a beacon or had a beacon that was on. I didn't even know what a beacon was. And I'm just like, wow, this is really shitty situation. I didn't even know if he was coming or thought that he'd been in it. And so you're just kind of sitting there, you're panicking, you're hyperventilating as much as you can with your mouth full of choked full of snow and ice.
Yeah.
About the time I was like really getting anxious, and all of a sudden things got brighter, and there he was. I know that there's a lot of skiers in the ski movies that think it's great to like trigger an avalanche and try and outrun it. I have never had enough confidence in my ski skills that I want to risk my life outrunning an avalanche.
No, yeah.
I'm always either trying to completely mitigate the danger where I can, or if I'm in really avalanche prone terrain, being very conservative and trying to figure out how to get out of there safely and come home to my family.
Well, I heard that there's an Osprey backpacks movie coming out of this fall about your 30-year career in ski photography. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the movie is being put together now by a company called FD4 Studios up in Golden. A guy named Gabe Rovick is putting the film together, and boy, we did a lot of shooting this winter did a couple weeks of filming here in the San Juans, video
Nice.
cameras and drones, and the whole bit. We wanted to film it here in the San Juans because this is where I've been for the last 30 years, and Osprey is in Cortez, kind of at the doorstep of the San Juans as well. And so the film project, they kind of came to me and said, hey, we want to tell your story about your life in pictures. So it is, we've shot a ton of footage. I've, interviewed photographers I've worked with, photo editors, marketing directors from various companies, people from Osprey. And the story is not, it's not snow porn. That's not the intention. The hope is that somebody will watch the film, and even if they've never skied a day in their life, they will take away the fact that somebody had grit, determination, was super passionate about their vision. I was just super persistent, chasing the dream. Kind of it, as I say, if you really want it, you can get it. In this case, that happened. It was something I really wanted, and I don't for a day not recognize that I was super fortunate, and there was a lot of serendipitous things that kind of fell in along the way. But that all kind of goes back to my parents being super supportive of me chasing my dream, and my dad saying, "Hey, you want to be a pro skier? Don't wait until you're 50 and regret that you didn't do it. Chase it, go do it, but get the education."
I'm very excited to see it, and I think that you deserve it. When do you think it comes out?
Film will be out this fall. It's one of those movies that hopefully resonates with anybody, but places where people in mountain towns and places where people choose to live because they're wealthy with a lifestyle and not necessarily the monetary riches that you give up by choosing to live in a mountain town. And so people appreciate it. It's just one more, story of, someone that found a way to live the dream.
You deserve to live the dream, Sven. That's all I got for you here. Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share at the end of the show?
A couple things that maybe you asked that I skipped over, but one of them was you had asked, I think, about a kind of a memorable experience from an international trip. So yeah, one of my more memorable trips, kind of making movie magic, as we say, when you're traveling to destinations on assignment for magazines, or if you have a commercial job to do, sometimes you get there and the conditions are really shitty. And our goal, really, where a photographer and an athlete really shine, is when you can go someplace and the conditions are terrible, and you create the movie magic, or you create photos that make somebody want to go to that spot. And sometimes it's really hard. I tell people that, my job is to make 2 inches look like 3 inches, or to make bad snow look skiable. But Liam Duran and I, about 4 years ago, we went to the Lofoten Islands in Norway. And I had been there before, but Liam hadn't. And it is arguably the most photogenic spot on Earth to shoot ski photography. And we got there and we spent a week in Narvik, Norway, shooting there, and then drove out onto the Lofoten Islands. And we got to Lofoten, and it proceeded to rain 6 inches.
Ooh.
Wash away a majority of the winter snowpack, like washed away all the snow at sea level. And then they went in right after the rain stopped, all-time record heat.
Oh, God.
Like, this is April, 70 degrees. And it should have been in like the 40s. And then the first morning that it was so dangerous because there had been so much rain, it was so warm that like whole mountainsides were sliding down, like big, the slush was coming down, glide cracks everywhere. Out of nowhere, sandstorm from the Sahara.
No way.
And I guess this happens like once a decade, where there's the wind comes out of the Sahara and it blows up Europe all the way into Scandinavia. So here we are after 6 inches of rain, it's record heat and a sandstorm. So the entire atmosphere is brown. What snow is left has this brown tinge to it. And so Liam and I are like, all right, well, we're going to earn our money. We were there. We were doing a story for, I believe, Ascent magazine. We had some projects from various sponsors, things that we needed to shoot. We were shooting next year's gear. And we're like, all right, we're in one of the most photogenic spots on Earth. How do we make up for the snow being brown and the sky not looking good? And so we just kind of put our heads together and we worked. We busted ass, sunrise to sunset, which that time of year, 20 hours of daylight. So we were up at 3 in-the-morning, hiking, trying to get sunset, out shooting until 11 o'clock at night, trying to get, when the light is really low on the horizon and the snow is kind of orange, it feels like you're kind of skiing on orange sherbet. The brown and the snow from the dust wasn't as noticeable in the sand. So that was when we like really had to shoot. So we would hike around during the day when the atmosphere was terrible and find spots and say, all right, well, what do you think when the sun gets down on the water here, before it sets, that it's going to light up the spot? So anyway, long story shorter, we shoot for a week and send out all these pictures. And the people that hosted us, the Seth Hobby, who owns the Lofoten Ski Lodge, he was there. And he's like, these are the worst conditions of all time to ever shoot ski photography in the Lofoten Islands. And then he saw the photos that we got. And he's like, when did you shoot these? We're like, well, we shot, this is our week's work. He's like, it's not possible that you got these shots with these conditions. And he was like blown away. Photos not only showed up in the magazine assignment we had, but they showed up in photo galleries from other magazines. You know, when these photo editors are looking at 50,000 photos and our photos are getting selected. And so I think that was one of those things where everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, and we still made it work.
Well, persistence pays off, and I think persistence is one of your superpowers.
Yeah,
You
and then
might be you might be the hardest working man in the ski business.
yeah, and then a funny story, if you want one, is I was doing a lot of shooting with Henry Georgi, and a lot of photos were showing up in international magazines. And there's a big Swedish magazine called Oka Skidor, and the photo editor of the magazine at the time was Matthias Fredriksson, who has now become, you know, one of the biggest ski photographers in the world.
Legend.
But he, as he was getting out of being, he was seeing all these great photos as the photo editor, and he decided he wanted to get into shooting ski photography. That was much sexier than being the photo editor. And so he had reached out to me, and I went to Norway, and we were in Narvik, Norway, doing a photo shoot for a week. And then we went and had really bad weather. It rained and snowed every day. And then we went for a week just across the border to Riksgränsen, Sweden. We're shooting in Riksgränsen. The weather's really bad there. So I go back over to Narvik to go on a deep sea fishing trip. We go out on this boat. We're fishing for halibut and cod. And then you look out to sea about 100 miles and you can see this wall of blue sky like coming. And there had been talk for like a week that this persistent low pressure was going to clear. So we see it coming and it's getting closer. So I tell the boat captain, like, we have to go back because I got to go to tell Matthias that the weather's going to clear up. So turns the boat around, take the train back over to Riksgränsen, cross the border into Sweden, track down Matthias because he hadn't gone fishing, said, hey, the weather's clearing. Let's go back. And this is in May, so it's light 24 hours a day. We load up all of our gear. We're in a hurry. We get in Matthias's car. We drive all the way back to Narvik. Call the guy that runs the cable car at the local ski area, which is closed for the season in Narvik. Figured it would save us a couple hours of climbing. So we get all of our shit out of the car. We're getting all packed up, getting all geared up, and I realize I have no ski boots.
No.
So there's no ski shop in Narvik. I am now an hour and a half by car away from Riksgränsen, where my ski boots reside.
Oh.
So the guy that has the key to the lift terminal that can turn on the lift for us says, well, there's one pair of boots in this lift terminal. They're a size 11 and a half, and I wear a size 9 and a half. So I'm like, well, it's my only option is to wear these boots. They're rear entry boots,
No way.
2 sizes too big, super packed out. So anyway, we take the cable car up, put the skins on, skin for about an hour, get up to the top of this peak overlooking Narvik. It is spectacular. It is like midnight. The light is firing. It looks like you are like the ocean is lit up. It's orange. And there's this beautiful cornice. Somehow, magically, I get the boots into my bindings, not thinking that I now have a gigantic boot in my binding. Somehow get them to close, and the shot is me airing it out over this cornice, Scott Schmidt style, completely crossed up. And it's a big drop. It's probably like 20, 25 feet off this cornice. Nice steep landing. I'm super psyched. Get back, skate up, hit the lip, super stylish, like cross them up, feeling like really good. And then the second I landed, I realized that my forward pressure was super screwed up because I had these giant boot sole. And I did a double heel eject, tomahawked a long way, at least 100 yards. And then I was tomahawking so hard, it was just my head. This was long before helmets. It was just my head sticking into the snow. Skis, long gone. Anyway, needless to say, the rest of that night, I didn't get to shoot any because my skis were all the way at the bottom, and there was no way I was going to go get them and hike back up. But the only photo that made it into mainstream media out of that photo shoot from that trip was like me airing it out off the cornice.
Nice.
Somehow it all worked.
And I think it comes back to persistence, putting yourself in that position over and over. Eventually things are going to work out, and things worked out a lot for you, Sven. So I appreciate your support, and it's been super fun that you came to Antarctica too, and we got to ski on the southern tip of South America and Ushuaia as well. We've had some good times already, and hopefully we get to do some more.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. I know that you'll be out there skiing a lot more days than I am, so probably easier to just tag on to one of your days. Yeah, love to get out there with you. I love what you're doing, and it's super fun. And it looks like you're on a lot of cool adventures. So count me in for one.
Well, absolutely. And again, I appreciate the kind words. And yeah, I mean, I definitely know I can't keep up with it in backcountry. So you just got to slow it down a little bit for me and we'll go have some fun. Nice, Sven. Well, that's all I got for you. Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share here at the end of the show?
No, I'm just yeah, super psyched that people care about what I've been doing. So hopefully if there's one person out there, whether they're a skier or not, that kind of decides to chase their dream, even though it seems super unorthodox or that it's not possible. If I inspire one person, yeah, to get out there and have more fun tomorrow than they had today, then it's all been worth it.
Thank you so much for listening to the SnowBrains podcast. If you like this podcast, please share with friends and family, and please make sure to subscribe. To find out more about SnowBrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and more. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Ditch the hassle and embrace the freedom of an all-inclusive ski vacation with Club Med. Their resorts in the European Alps and Canada offer the perfect blend of exhilarating skiing, exceptional service, and worry-free pampering. Enjoy having lift tickets, delicious meals, lessons for all ages, and endless après-ski fun, all included in one price. While the kids are having a blast at the supervised children's clubs, you can focus on mastering your skiing skills and creating unforgettable memories on and off the slopes. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to experience skiing without limits. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast was edited by Liam Abbott, music by Chad Crouch, and I'm your host, creator, and director, Miles Clark.